Welcome back to the Jagged Edge. It's been a long time, but we're closer to the draft. We got Javal, we got
Made up
John,
for it. We have a
guys.
special guest, a very, very special guest once again, John Shipley. So John, for the people who, if you don't follow him, let us people know where to find you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. It's at underscore John underscore Shipley. I realize that's too many underscores, but it is what it is. There's like a 90-year-old dude in Minnesota who writes sports called John Shipley. So until he croaks, I got the underscores. So we ride.
Damn, is this like some wrestling promo? You're gonna go like, well, until this John Shipley does, then I'm the real John Shipley. There's
I
just
mean,
someone else before it.
I get the bigger pop, so I'm not really sure
That's
what he's
right.
really drawing.
Yeah, you
Talk your
should say
mess
that.
shit.
Since I have more followers, you have to legally change your ad name. It's like force. Yeah, to get your followers up, buddy. That's basically what you should just say.
Yeah, no, get your followers up, get your money up. We're moving different over here, but for now, two underscores. You can also find me at Jaguars on SI on Twitter and Facebook. Jaguars on SI if you just Google it, whatever.
All that, all that.
We're currently Brian Thomas Jr. days away from the draft. So, man, we're just the process. I feel it always flies by until April, and then April after everything's finished and it's just pro day stuff, it just slows down to a dragging halt. So, yeah, we're almost there, but
This process especially has been weird because
everything, yeah.
normally when people are caring like about the draft, like the lead up to the combine and stuff, the Jags were still hiring people, and then you go right into free agency after that. So it really feels like really just like the last like month has been draft centric for the Jaguars, which normally isn't the case. Normally they're preparing for the draft in like November.
Yeah, it's definitely been a interesting process. I mean, just with all the new infusion of everything. I mean, new coaching staff, new GM, new EVP, hopefully new uniforms that Tony hinted at, but we'll see about that. I don't think it's going to be for a while. But just, especially coming from such a 180 of a draft process, going from, a guy like Trent who's focusing so much on measurables, athleticism, and then, Gladstone, who's a intangibly rich guy who I think they literally made a counter of how many times he said intangibly rich at the pre-draft media thing, and it was like five or six. So it's very
The
interesting to see.
the intangibly curious label has been the one that's killed me the most. Intangibly curious. Now, like the biggest way I've described it is like Trent Baalke was literally the most traditional, like old school scouting guy like you could find. Like he had literally the way he talked like about like trading back. It literally seems like he had just learned in like 2023, 2024 what like trade value charts were and stuff. Like he was just like by the numbers, top, cut his teeth with Bill Parcells and stuff. Was very old school, very throwback, very traditional, very conservative. You know, then you go to Gladstone and he hasn't even made a pick yet, and it's already clear like things they're doing are just different from the rest of the league. No top 30 visits. They're the only team in the NFL this year without one. Like even like I know the Rams don't do a lot, but even the Rams have had, some visits this year. I think they've had like 7 in the last 4 or 5 drafts or something like that. So the Jags are definitely moving differently, under the new regime. They went from being about as bland and conservative as you can get to, now they're, on the edge and stuff. They're being bold. It remains to be seen if it actually works. That's something that we won't know for a couple years now, but it's definitely, at least a change up in terms of what they're doing. Because before it was literally the most like standard process ever. They were your typical 1990s scouting department. So now it's definitely a little different.
I think it's just really interesting both seeing how not only, could the coaching be a lot different going from, Liam Doug Peterson, where you're the X, you're the Z, you're the slot, and then now Liam Cohen is going to try to move guys, but then also just Gladstone, and they just, trying to really modernize the Jags. And as I said, we don't know how it's going to work yet. At the very least, you're doing something different, and you have to could it backfire? I mean, we're Jags fans, so yeah, but at least they're trying to break against the grain, modernize, and just do something different. So, we'll see how the draft goes. And then obviously, you have the number fifth overall pick. There's been a lot of people who have been saying, especially when the long time when you get the fifth overall pick, you start looking at prospects, and then now it's people prospect fatigue kind of settles in. So I guess, John, who do you think are the most likely options at 5? And just kind of give us your personal preferences towards like what do you think makes the most sense and what they should do.
So if I had to like group together 3 prospects who I think could be the 5th pick, and I'm not sure if all of them will be there. Mainly, Will Campbell, first of all. I think he's very much so an option. Whether they want to play him at left tackle, whether they want to play him at right tackle, whether they want to play him at guard, just this isn't the regime that extended Walker Little. So I think you can assume, even though he's under contract, that they'd be willing to add somebody who can be more of a, their guy, long-term answer. I think Campbell's a really good prospect. I think he's, right about where Joe Alt was last year, and Alt had a really good year, the Chargers last year as a right tackle. I think Campbell is one of the few players in this draft who would be a top 5 or so pick in most drafts. I like Mason Graham. I don't think Mason Graham goes top 5 in a good draft. I don't think, Jalen Walker even sniffs top 5 in a good draft, etc. The other 2 prospects who I think are viable options, like in terms of what I think might happen, obviously Mason Graham. I do think people like jumped the shark in linking him to the Jags because everybody's just like linking him on like logic and connecting dots. Like, oh, this guy will definitely be there. He doesn't seem like too much of a reach at this point, but I don't think there's been anything like actually concrete other than, I guess, him working out in a salute to surface shirt that actually links, the Jaguars to him. Like there just hasn't been, a lot of smoke. It's really just people kind of making assumptions based on how they think the first 4 picks will go. And then the guy who like you're actually seeing smoke from, like I think Dane Brugler mocked him at 5, and I don't think Dane would do that if he didn't believe there was a chance. Ashton Jeanty, Boise State running back. I wouldn't even think about taking him at 5. Like I think he's probably the 3rd or 4th best player in this class. So like just from a talent standpoint, it makes sense. But you can get a 1,000-yard rusher in the 4th round, especially in this draft class. Liam Cohen did it last year. Bucky Irving was a 4th-round pick. Kyron Williams, I think, was, a mid-round pick. But I do think that, if you're the Jaguars, like this, like picking at 5, like this class, sucks for you. Most players don't have the talent to be the 5th pick. I do think they could at least talk themselves into, oh, well, Jeanty is a blue chip player, one of the best players in this class from a talent perspective. It might not be a reach. So those are the 3 players that I'm thinking are most likely. I've seen both of these guys mocked. I'll go ahead and plant my flag. I do not think, as long as they pick at 5, things can change if they trade back. As long as they pick at 5, I don't think they're going to take Ted McMillan. I don't think they're going to take Jalen Walker. I don't think they're going to take Armin Impow. Those are just the 3 players who I think at 5, just my personal belief, I don't think that they're going to be that interested. Maybe if they trade back, they'd have more interest, obviously, but I think at 5 it will come down to Campbell, Graham, and Jeanty.
Yeah, barring Shador Sanders' visit with the Giants today, we don't expect him to go anywhere near top 5 unless, like you said, a trade happens. But doomsday scenario, like, maybe an Abdul Carter falls or something like that. I don't expect anything like that to happen. But I think it is kind of cut and clear for the 3 guys that you mentioned in Graham, in Campbell, in Jeanty. If you had to just like guess today, how would you rank him in most likely to least likely out of the 3 that you mentioned as of right now?
Dang, it's really tough for me because like since it's a brand new regime, there's obviously like no past stuff to base it on, like no track record stuff. Like everybody can talk about how Braden Fisk and Mason Graham are both built like portly 7th graders. Yeah, there's definitely similarities between them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what James Gladstone will want to go. And Liam Cohen and the Rams both found success with starting running backs getting big production in the 4th, 3rd, 5th rounds. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what you say. It's so hard for me to try to figure these guys out so quickly, especially when new guys come in, like with the last, regime, they were there long enough that, I built so many connections throughout that building that, I was really entering the draft. I really had a good idea of, what kind of guys they were looking for. I still have, a lot of connections. I'm still building new ones, but with so many new decision makers, it definitely kind of throws a curveball. And I do think that this regime is honestly playing things a lot closer to the vest than the last one. Like, I remember going to the pre-draft presser in 2022, and that was like 2 weeks before the draft. So some people were mocking Trayvon Walker number one, but a lot of people still thought Aiden Hutchinson's going number one. And Trent Baalke just comes out, like, he gets asked about Aiden Hutchinson and his private visit. He just comes out and says, well, Aiden's a good football player, but there's other good football players in this draft. And then he says something else, like complimenting Trayvon later in the press conference, to where I walked away from there and I was like, Jesus, they're picking Trayvon Walker. And I remember my observations article I did after that. I read it not too long ago. Like, I literally wrote in there, like, yeah, he's making it pretty clear they're taking Trayvon Walker. Whereas this regime, like, I didn't get anything like from them on Tuesday, other than they think that, and they think the receivers at the top of this class aren't very good. Which, like, the first round receivers this year are like, it's a wasteland, more or less. Like, I like Tet, but like, I wouldn't, like, Tet is a guy who, like, if you took him at like 25th, I wouldn't be like, oh, that's a steal. I'd be like, oh, that makes sense for where he's going. But in this class, it's the way I've like seen this draft class described. It's basically the first round is one giant second round. There's like 2 or 3 blue chippers, and then the guy you pick at 5 very easily could be picked at 25, and you wouldn't bat an eye. So in terms of like probability, I'd still probably put Graham first. Campbell, I don't think Campbell's going to be there,
Yeah, I
because I
think
think
the
Campbell's going to go
Vrabel,
number
yeah.
4 to New England. But if Campbell was there, I think he, is pretty close to Graham. And then Genty. Like, I'd be like I mentioned, I'd be more surprised if it took Jalen Walker than Ashton Genty. Like if they take Genty, I'm not going to be falling out of my chair being like, oh, what the hell? That's, like, some people are going to go crazy, if it happens, and be like, oh, nobody saw this coming. Where it very easily, could happen. I think just because of the strength of this class, like at 5, it sucks, and he's one of the few like really really good players at that spot.
Yeah, see, because my track of mind is who's in the room for those 3 positions. Like, you currently, if you do take a Mason Graham, then there's your long-term replacement for Eric Armstead, who's going to primarily play in the interior. If you take a Will Campbell, you assume he's taking one of Walker Little or Ezra Cleveland's spot on the offensive line. And of course, if you take a guy like Gency, he's definitely the long-term replacement for ETN at the running back room. And so, like you said, with the new regime, the fact they're kind of just, keeping things close to the chest and not kind of just exposing their cards, especially if they do want to move back, or if they really like a guy they don't even mention that we don't know of, then it's good to kind of just keep secrets in your first go around in this draft, and especially for a very young staff and management room this go around too.
Yeah, and like the draft is a lot of like gamesmanship and strategy and keeping secrets. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to keep secrets, but I mean, just like NFL coaches, scouts, executives are probably the most paranoid people in the world. So it definitely makes sense for a new regime to, kind of want to keep a lid on things.
Yeah. I guess even just kind of, we're talking a lot about what top happens at 5, but even just throughout the draft, because I do agree that the top of the draft is not a lot of good blue chippers, but I also think that there still are some good positions to value. So, we talked even a little bit about with the Gabe comment. They're probably going to go after a receiver on day 2, whether it's that second round or in the third round, probably going to go after a receiver. So what other positions do you think they're more likely to go after? I mean, they're probably going to draft an offensive lineman. Which position? Nobody really knows yet, because they could take a tackle, they could take a guard and kind of just say, hey, Walker, Anton, even if you have to compete, even if they think those guys are better, they're still not going to hand them the job. So they can kind of
Yeah.
just draft the best offensive lineman and then just figure this out. At safety room, they could still use some work corner. So what do you think they're most likely to draft just on day 2?
Yeah, no,
Obviously,
I think,
a 5, but
yeah, I think receivers definitely up there. I think, like, and I agree with you. I think this is a good draft on like day 2 and 3, which is where the Jaguars have most of their picks. Like, having 3 picks on day 2, I think is really good for the Jaguars. Like, you can get some solid players there. I think number 36 is kind of the sweet spot for receivers in this draft, because you won't get Tet Matthew Golden, Luther Burden, potentially Luther Burden. I could maybe see him being available at 36, but there's not great first round value for the receivers in this year's class, outside of obviously Travis Hunter. But at 36, I think like either of the Iowa State guys, I think the kid from Ohio State, if he's there, and I keep seeing people say like, oh, there's no way he's going to be there. I mean, no,
Yeah.
that's asinine. It's
Yeah.
unless you're like a Travis Hunter, Jamar Chase prospect, like at your position, there's no reason to say any player. There's no way they could be there. We see great players fall to the second round and beyond every single year. That's one of my least favorite thing that people do is like, oh, there's no way this player falls out the first round. No, that there is a way. It's like very possible. So
Yeah.
I think he'd be like the ideal scenario at 36. He's not like a game breaker, but he's very solid, very reliable,
Yeah.
very like Robert Woods esque, I think. And I don't mean like Old Man River Robert Woods, like with the Texans. I mean like when he was with Buffalo, Los Angeles at the start of his career, when he was like one of the better number 2 receivers in the NFL. Because that's the thing. Brian Thomas gives them so much flexibility. They don't have to look for a number 1 receiver coming into this draft. There's not a lot of teams that can say that. So they can add a guy who maybe doesn't have the ceiling of a number 1 receiver and still, get a lot of value out of him. I think safety is definitely a position they have to add to. I mean, right now, the safety room, looks like Eric Murray, Antonio Johnson, Dewey Wingard, maybe Darnell Savage. I,
Daniel
I, I
Thomas Frazier.
Daniel Thomas is definitely on the football team.
He's a football player on the team that plays safety.
And plus, like Wingard and Daniel Thomas are both in contract years. Eric Murray is very clearly like a band-aid for the short term. They need to add some youth to that position. Antonio Johnson kind of has to prove that he even deserves playing time after last year. So I think safety is kind of a wide open place they could add to. They need to add edge rushers, obviously, like just like pure defensive ends on the roster. They only have 3 right now, and one of them is Miles Cole. So more or less they have 2. And you need to add, and whether it's like even a day 3 guy, you need to add somebody to throw into that mix that isn't Eric Armstead, that isn't Yasir Abdullah. So I think definitely those positions. I'd say cornerback depth. Maybe they don't target a corner at 36. Maybe they do. It really depends on their evaluation of Jarian Jones and how much they trust him on the outside. But I'd say corner, they definitely need to add to the position in some way. And you mentioned offensive line, especially interior offensive line. Their guard depth has been terrible for a while. And even like right now, yeah, they added Patrick McCary, but Ezra Cleveland, I think, is an average starter at best. Has a lot of injury issues seemingly every year. So he's not somebody who you're really saying you feel great about your left guard position. And then behind them, they have nobody. Like Fred Johnson and Chuma Udoga have played guard before in the past. They're more tackles. They're definitely deeper at tackle right now than they are at guard. So I think they definitely need to add to the interior offensive line as well.
Yeah, I know just going back to even the receiver point, I feel there's a lot of really good receivers on day 2 and day 3 that I know people have been, the scheme isn't fully out. People are kind of theorizing what they're looking for. They're trying to want to move BTJ across formation, so they want a receiver who can play inside, play outside. And if you're a good blocker, that's always a plus too. So there's a lot of good receivers who can block. I know people have been talking about Buka, Alec Eilman, or Jack Beck are like the popular names. There's still a lot of good guys even on like round 3 they could still go after. And then even just with safety, I'm just really curious what they do at safety, like what kind of player they target, just because the room is so barren that I think they probably need a free safety more, but they could use a strong. But also with the defense, is Cam just going to want to have 2 guys who can both play deep? Is he going to have, is it just going to be one player that plays free, or are they going to try to rotating? So we don't really know how it's going to look yet. Maybe they just want to get 2 guys who can kind of play deep at an above average level. They can rotate a little bit. I remember I talked with Justice was on with Gus. He talked a little bit about that. So safety room, we'll kind of see how it goes. And then, with corner, obviously, they had the clip of Jarian saying, can he come play corner? I mean, his tape outside at Florida State wasn't great when he played corner outside. So I don't blame the coaching staff for letting him play slot, because he was good at it in college and he was good at rookie. But we'll see him try to play corner. And then, just with the O-line, I probably do think that if they're going to try to play more of a power gap scheme, which we'll see if that's what they want to do, they might adjust it, but if that's what they want to do, then it makes sense for them to go after Ezra replacement, considering he's more of like a zone guy for the pass regime. So there's so many different options, but because we don't really know how the team's going to look, I feel we have an idea of what it's going to be on paper, but obviously we don't know how everything is. So that just makes this draft process just so interesting because now we're going to actually kind of see what they think about the roster, how they want to improve just based by the prospects that they picked. And that's what makes this draft just so interesting is that we don't really know what they're looking for on the O line, the deep. We don't know what they're looking for at all. I
We
would
don't know. Yeah, we don't know anything.
I wanted to ask even for like their next third pass rusher, will they want a speed guy, more of a power guy? But maybe they just say we'll take the best available player, and if they rotate him, because as like nobody, we have no clue what's going on, which is cool. But for mock drafts, it's like, what are we doing?
If I had to guess, I'd say power guy, just based on what camp's kind of been around. And I think you made a great point, like on the receivers. Like, if there's anything we know, it's probably that what they're looking for in receivers. Like, they want guys who can play inside, outside. They want guys who can, make an impact as blockers, whether in
So,
the
so
screen
not Parker
game.
Washington,
It,
essentially.
it not Christian Kirk. Like, I know everybody, is still mourning them trading Christian Kirk, but that to me was the reason they traded Christian Kirk. Like, I think it didn't all have to do with the money. I think it had to do with the fact that he can't play outside, he can't block. It just I think in Doug Peterson's offense, he was very much okay with guys who can only play one role because he wasn't really moving them around. Whereas in this offense, looking at prospects who can play multiple roles, like the Iowa State guys, like Aguka, like Jack Beck, those are the guys I think that they would really value.
Especially ones that can block too. So just, if you want to try to, even if you want to play from 11 personnel, maybe more condensed formation, then hopefully. So we'll see how
That
that.
that that legitimately might be like Gabe's role this year is like screen
So
blocker. Like it's like funny because like if you're a wide receiver, like the most value he's bringing to the offense is his blocking, but it's a real thing, especially with how Cohen does, his screen game, probably the most like versatile screen packages in the NFL. Any skill players they add, they have to have that aspect. So it's like you're reading a scouting report and, it more or less starts with can't really block. It's kind of a negative. And that's another reason why I don't think they love Ted McMillan because, for as big as he is, for as strong as he is, for as physical as he should be, he's a crappy blocker. And I think those things matter to them.
you gotta
That's so
continue
real.
roster. If you're not intangibly rich as a blocker, then you just doesn't matter how much passes you catch, buddy.
I, I I am trying so hard to figure out what intangibly rich means. Every explanation like puts me further from it. I think it just means like fast, big, strong, and you try hard. That's what I think it means. But there are some guys who you see on tape who kind of loaf sometimes. Who I'm like, okay, maybe that's like what they're not trying to go for. But then again, what team is like seeing a guy loaf on tape and they're like, oh, I love that shit.
My
Yeah.
guess is to it as more so. I mean, granted, this is a total dart throw. My guess intended rich just means if they're just like have good film and they're not just so focused on like measurables, or like if a player does like the little things on tape, or he has like the block that leads to down the field spring, like whether it's like a running back, a wide receiver, they make that extra block, or if it's an offensive lineman doing the little extra things, and then two just like off the field leadership, which obviously every player coach wants a great leader. They don't want head cases, but I guess they're not as focused on athletes as much as, hey, do you play your ass off? Especially considering even they're both kind of coaches, like they're coaches' sons. They're gonna
Yeah.
look at all the little things like, oh, he like that tight end made the chip that allowed the play to get off. So, we're like the little things, but I could be wrong. Who knows? I'm
No,
I'm
I think you're exactly right. Like I think that literally describes like some of the guys they signed this offseason. Like that literally describes Johnny Mont and Hunter Long. Like they're not flashy players. They're not going to make big plays, but they do the little things that can kind of help everybody else out. So I think you've described it better than anybody else have. I'll
Yeah.
go ahead and say that.
As
I
someone who
I'll take that.
watches, yeah, as someone who watches a lot of soccer, there's like a term or just like a joke term that we say called work rate and mashallah. Like legit mentality over everything. You need to be a mentality monster. I think for as mentally inept the Jags were in one possession games last season, it's kind of a good thing to kind of hear because that with the right mentality, maybe even half of those one possession losses we had would have turned around to W's, and that's the reason why Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke aren't here anymore.
Yeah, maybe the entire season wouldn't have been lost because of a week 1 fumble. Is
I still was there. I paid money watching that game. I remember I was literally walking to the stadium. Like I was walking to the stadium to move to a seat, and I just saw on the replay ETN fumble, and I fell to my knees. I sit down. The very next play is the Tyreek Hill touchdown, and I was around Dolphins fans too, so I just said, I know you guys think the Dolphins suck, but this is what I have to watch. So I remember that. I remember that game vividly. So and then Christian Kirk just dropped those two balls on third down. It was a fun game, even despite the loss. But dear God,
for like 2.5 quarters, they look pretty good.
I will admit though, I had the end zone view, and then I just saw when Brian Thomas was talking to Ramsey, and it was like 2 feet away from me. I was like, "Yo, that dude's gonna be." That was the one thing I remember taking away was that literally from the first quarter that BTJ is the best receiver on this team, but it took them 10 weeks to figure that out.
It
So
took everybody else to die. It took Christian Kirk to die. It took Evan Ingram to die to like,
I,
oh, let's give this guy 10 targets a game. Let's
I'm
hope
just
that's
some
not the
random
problem
fan,
anyways.
though. I'm not an NFL coach. What the hell would I know? But yeah, John, thank you for joining us. I know I don't know how much more time you've got, so I don't want to try to ramble on too much. I know you're quite a busy man, but just we appreciate you for coming on, talking Jags, and just really just it's a week away, man. Now it's just the fun part is really about to begin. But I know we're gonna have a lot of draft prospects to write up. I pray for your sake that they trade into next year, so you'll have less write downs to do on day 3 and 2. So, day one won't be too bad.
What draft was it when they drafted like 12, like
20,
2023?
it was 2020 and 2023.
2023, I was so pissed off, dude. They
Yeah, 'cause
kept trading
I just
back and
remember
getting
they're
more
just like
picks.
kept trading back, and you're just like you're some
Oh,
you're so pissed.
Dude, I was literally about to crash out in the press box. They're trading back and then taking like completely random dudes. Like that last round when
Ventrell
they took
Miller.
like
No, they traded
Derek
up for Ventrell Miller, didn't they?
that what was it? The last round they took like Raymond Vohasek and Derek Parrish. And I was like, you assholes.
I mean, I do think because of the scouting process, Gladstone might actually want to try to trade more picks for next year when he has more of his scouts in the building. So hopefully they won't use as much on day 3, but maybe they'll. Hopefully, I don't want to jinx anything. So what the hell do I?
See, what I'm
It's a
worried
random
about
guy.
for all the reporters the most is that we have the most open UDFA spots available, which is, Gladstone and Tony Khan's kind of like thing, which is very funny how that works out that they have so much open room. So I know that's gonna probably be a hellacious
Yeah, they got
project.
room for like 21 undrafted free agents or something crazy like that. To me, like they're just saying like they think the roster was completely horrific,
Garbage.
which
Yeah.
not outside of like 4 or 5 players, they're not wrong.
Trent Baalke, your war crimes will never be forgotten to this organization. All those draft picks wasted because we're back to ground zero again. But hey, what do we know? We're just fans and a
They
reporter, of
have Tony
course.
in charge now, so even if it may not be perfect, but we might get the uniform. So even if we suck, we'll have some aura at least. I can live with that. It just gave me the uniform. I said that the Jags will never be good until they fire Doug, they fire Trent, and they bring back the old uniforms. They're 2/3 of the way there, man. So all I'm just hoping for is I don't think it was going to be soon. Like they're probably actually going to wait until the stadium opens to bring back the Prowlers full time. But I think they're bringing it back before the decade's over, and then they'll finally be good.
Hey, they can wear it up to 4 times a year, so I don't think there's any rush for that organization to do anything. That's just so Jags, but
It
also
should be
so
70
NFL to be like, you know
times
what? 4 times a year, I guess. Just it makes no
It should
sense.
be
They want to
70
make
times a year,
They're
but
doing the NBA thing where they're just gonna do like, oh, we should have a city edition uniform where the Jaguars dress up as Blue Angels or some dog shit in like a year or two from now. Something like that's gonna happen. Like, I don't know. I'm not gonna believe it till I see it.
But yeah, man. So I don't know how much more time you've got left, but just appreciate you for having us on. And once again, share, remind the people where they can find you if they, for some reason, don't. Which, if you're generous enough to follow us as Jags fans, you should know John Shipley. But if somehow you've never heard of him before, just once again plug your stuff.
Yeah, you can find me at _John_Shipley at Jaguars on SI. Thank you guys for having me on. Make sure you guys are listening to them. Make sure you guys are following them. Two of the best dudes I know in like the Jaguars content sphere. And like I'm not just like talking about you guys' content. Like it's obviously fantastic, but two of the best guys I know. So appreciate y'all having me on.
Hey man, one last thing before you go. And Javal, I know you talked about uniforms, but because Yardline Leota says we're changing it full time this year, it means it's definitely not going to happen because none of his free agents also showed up here in Jacksonville in the first place.
Thank you for having me on. That's my comment.
All right, John, we'll let you go, man. You have a wonderful rest of your day. Appreciate your time, man.
Appreciate it, fellas.
Golly.
That was definitely a great start. But yeah, so obviously draft is coming up in 7 days, and we're going to I've been going through all the mocks, and when you have a lot of picks too, you really want to know the strengths and weaknesses of the draft. So even for me, I feel that first round we're kind of in a like decent spot. What I think they can definitely get some great contributors, as John was alluding to, on day two and day three, just because even though there's not, I feel there's just with this draft as a whole, there's not really a ton of great blue chippers, but there's just a lot of solid guys. And the good thing with the Jags is that because they already have some good players, they don't need to fully, or we're doing a mock live.
Yeah, well, do your thing. I didn't mean to
It's
cut you
just,
off to kind of
we
keep
can
it a
do,
surprise.
I
You're
mean,
just like, whoa.
I know with PFF, they only have up to 3 rounds. So if you want to just do a 3 round
Oh,
today,
I'm
then
just doing a first round mock. We can do a bigger one in the future because I'm just gonna do one.
oh, we're doing
We're
a
gonna
first
do one
round.
for
What you think is
everyone.
going
For
to happen?
everyone, we gotta do an
Oh, damn,
official Jagged
mock,
Edge mock. But no,
jagged.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I was like, oh yeah, I wanted to do a mock still.
Oh
We
yeah,
got the guess out of the way. You gotta kill some time, so for sure.
edge mock. So. Yeah, man. I guess we're doing this live. What did Bill O'Reilly say? We'll
Fuck
do
it,
it.
we do it live.
So, okay.
Fuck.
Unfortunately, we know who the Titans are drafting, which
Media don't
I
even gotta.
hate that I have to. Like, Cam Ward had the cool Selly, and now I have to root on him to get traded so I can root on him to do good.
He's a turnover prone bum who will continue to turn the ball
And
over
we're
in the
gonna be doing this
NFL.
because of big six.
Exactly. He loves his random throw into triple coverage, and he's gonna
It's
keep
okay.
doing that in the
They
NFL.
went from Will Levis to slightly cooler Will Levis. Well, he's not. He's cooler for sure. So,
Yeah.
Browns. I mean, honestly. What I think they're drafting. Yeah. Now the
I
Giants is where it gets really interesting. I know I'm talking to someone who's trying to, if hopefully I can get him on next week, but we're just saying to me the biggest intrigue in this draft is what the hell do the New York Giants do? Do they take a quarterback or not? Because nobody really knows yet.
God, where the fuck is he? Where is
But
Shador
here,
Sanders? Where the fuck is he? Oh, he's in
the
45.
thing
That's
is, I
crazy.
honestly, I feel. I think Shadur prospect wise is probably closer to like late first, early second, which is fair. However, I think just in this quarterback class, he's definitely the second best quarterback. And I think even like he should go in the. I think people are saying like him falling out the first is like Shadur is gonna go top 20 for sure. Where does he go? It just depends if the owner really meddles, because there's a chance that John Mara just says, I don't care that Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston are my quarterbacks, because there's no guarantee the Giants will even be bad enough to draft a quarterback next year. They could try. Like, it just depends what does the owner think, because they haven't gone to draft a quarterback in a while. If Shadur's there, NFL bloodlines, I could see the owner just saying, you know what, I don't care. I'm drafting the quarterback because I need a quarterback. It just depends if the owner picks or the GM picks. Because the GM, they might try to take Abdul Carter and say, hey, we got to play the best we can this year to save our job, figure out coach next year. The owner might say, well, if we don't have a quarterback, we're not going to win anyways. So,
Yeah, but also if we suck, we also get Archer Manning next year.
but even
That's
there's no guarantee that they would get Arch. Consider like they literally all they had to do was lose one game, and they put up 45 points in the Colts, and now they can't take Cam Ward. They could just do the same thing next year. So it could be a dual Carter. We
I
could
think
get
I'm just gonna do it. I think the fact that we're taking too long to kind of justify it means that we know it's
it's
gonna
just
be
this
Abdul
point in the
Carter.
draft is what we can talk about this way more next week, just because this
Yeah.
part fascinates the hell out of me.
Oh
But
yeah, we're gonna pigeonhole even more. I think we're just gonna
probably
pigeonhole.
like probably Will Campbell. They could take Genty, but I think they take Will
That's,
Campbell.
they
And
the
now,
the the fact that Patriots reporters have been depressed since a month ago. That's like, oh yeah, not depressed, just like, I think it's gonna be Will Campbell. The fact they're so open about it, I think it's just
Yeah,
there.
there has been a
Oh,
lot of like report connection. So, which I think if it's between Genty and Mason Graham, I think they'd rather take the pretty good defensive tackle prospect over the elite running back prospect. Ashton Genty is better. I think if they do value positional versatility, especially because it's trenches, then they're going to say we need to build the trenches up. Let's get Mason Graham in here and try to kick some ass. So that would be my pick as of now, which there's no set in smoke stone, but he just feels like talking. Can we talk like a little bit about Mason? Just like a
yeah,
little.
because we did take him for the Jags, so we might as well talk
I
about
guess
Mason Graham a little
e-
bit.
even in terms of, I know obviously we don't know what intangibly rich means, but and I know I kind of had that dart throw, but he does feel like an intangible rich player for them. Like, yes, he doesn't have the super long arms or like the great size, but he played great. He had great stats. He had a good pressure win rate. He was a wrestling champion, played for a national championship. So, you can tell that he means a lot to the team. I think they're going to value the Michigan aspect of them a little bit more, playing for such a big program and the fact that championship, even if doesn't have that deal arm length, I think just the fact that everything he does, I don't want to look too much into it, but Mason Graham screams intangibly rich.
That he does. That he
So
does.
that's why I actually like, because it's such a 180 from the bulky philosophy. Where if this was bulky, he would take Shamar Stewart here because Shamar Stewart is literally the highest graded athlete
Or
on.
Jalen Walker.
Yeah, he would take. No, I think he would take Shamar Stewart though, because Shamar Stewart is literally Trevon Walker at level athleticism again. Can't rush the passer. He would just take him again. So, but yeah, that's just my. I think they take
And then
Mason.
if
All that to say,
Genty's there, since they already gave Gino a contract extension, I think Genty goes to the Raiders, right?
Pete Carroll does. I think it does scream like a Pete Carroll like mate because their offensive line itself isn't even bad. It's mainly just they don't have any running backs for the Jets. I mean they probably would take either Membo. I don't know if they would take a tight end at 7. So even just taking the right tackle, they could use more upgrade at right tackle. It's like a left tackle. Even if Membo isn't the highest, like in this draft, it kind of doesn't matter. Now for the Panthers,
This is where it gets interesting, I feel like,
I
right?
because you could take, to me, I think it's up to 2 players I would take here. I would take either Mike Green or I would take Tat McMillan. So it just depends if you want to take a pass rusher or a wide receiver. But I think Mike Green is a better pure pass rusher than Jalen Walker. You can move Jalen Walker, I guess Jalen is in the mix for Carolina, but I think if it was up to me, just grade wise, if I wanted a player to play on the edge and rush the passer, I'm taking Mike Green. If
You're
I
gonna go
want
Mike Green at 8.
a
You
receiver,
want to do it?
yeah, I think for them, they just get as much as I do think they need a number one for Bryce. Hopefully, you at least took Leggett. So now for the Saints,
I think we have to, right? With the Derek Carr uncertainty. I I kind of feel like, or do they take Jackson Dart? I think in the quarterback position, this is where it gets like super angsty.
the Saints. I mean, I thought honestly they should have taken him before the news. It just if they don't, it's either 2 players and they have very similar. They're literally both same names. It's either Shador or Shamar Stewart because I feel the Saints take a lot of athletic long pass rushers. But I feel we'll take Shador. Just
It feel like it makes way too much sense with the news coming out, right?
yeah, I feel it makes too much sense. Now for the Bears, I mean, this is kind of a tricky spot. Honestly, I'm halfway tempted to take Tad McMillan and just give Caleb.
More wide receivers.
I'm halfway tempted because they've already put a lot in the offensive line, a lot in the defensive line. They're second. Like I feel with the Bears, it's either that or Tyler Warren, pretty much. I
I mean,
mean,
don't they already have Cole Kmet though?
yeah, but I think Cole Kmet is on the last year of his deal. They could move on from him. Honestly, I think with the Ben Johnson fit and Tyler Warren being another one block or two, I kind of like I know it's a chalk pick because it's probably either be Warren or taking another safety to maybe replace. Um,
Malachi starts.
yes, either be. I mean, maybe they want to take Nick and Maury too, but I know their safety last year, Jaquan Brisker missed time with concussions. He was more of a strong safety, so they could draft a replacement now, but it's probably either Warren, Tet, or Starks. So
I have no idea what the Bears are gonna do. I have a Bears friend too. I should probably ask him who should I take in the mock draft. I'm gonna just show him and be like, what do you think? And he's like, what the fuck was this? Who do you want to put over here?
you know what? I'll take Walter Nolan actually. Do a bit of a.
D
I
line.
think I know they've taken a lot in their D line, but I think they could still use another dude because they got who was the on the Falcons? Grady Jarrett, but even if they
Yeah.
haven't learned from Grady Jarrett, they'll keep in rotation. I like that better than a tight end. So for the Niners,
They seem like a Will Johnson kind of team, don't they? At least that's my, I don't know, for someone who doesn't do a lot of mock drafts anymore, that just screams like a team that could take Will
yeah,
Johnson,
I was gonna
right?
say for the Niners, probably would be if it's not a defensive player, because could they use Starks? Honestly, they have lost some secondary talent. It also could be Jahdae Barron.
It could be
Yeah,
Jahdae Barron.
I kind of like Barron because I know they lost Charvarius Ward, and then
Okay.
Solid will play more of that cover three zone blocking in. And then the Cowboys, this is Ted. The Cowboys, I know they've done a lot of work in receivers.
Yeah,
They're drafting, the Cowboys are drafting a receiver. It just depends on if Ted gets there. But they for sure would take Ted and then put him next to CD.
team don't get so for a team that's about to trade Jalen Ramsey, but also want to protect Tua Tagovailoa, they got a lot on their plate. Do we give him Will Johnson or do we just
I
kind of
mean,
see?
if the medicals are good, I would take Josh Simmons here. He is getting invited to the first round, and he's probably one. He was you passed him. He was earlier.
Oh, where is he?
He's the offensive tackle
Oh, tackle.
From Ohio State.
Oh, right
If
here.
the medicals are good, which he got invited to the draft, leading to believe that his medicals are good. The Dolphins definitely could. I feel they've always needed offensive line help, which I mean, saw
And
the
they
week.
never take one in the first round, I feel like.
I think they should go for either Josh Simmons or Kelvin Banks, but I think Simmons is the better player. Just really depends on his health, but we'll take Josh Simmons.
Why not? I mean, Colts,
Ballard taking a tight end just doesn't seem so unlikely.
it
So
doesn't, right? I kind of feel like with the recent dominance of tight ends in the NFL, it seems like something that they would do.
like they usually they've been against the grain. It feels very chalk to Tyler Warren because I low key I know they got Chargers. They invested in their secondary. I think they could
Yeah,
still take Will Johnson here, honestly.
they
I
could.
think that would be my pick. Just taking Will Johnson and
No
getting.
more, no more Gus Bradley schemes. So I guess maybe we'll just do it. Fuck it. Tyler Warren is falling though. That's
I
crazy.
mean, I think his range will be like. I think he'll go soon. Now for the Falcons, I did take Mike Green, which kind of sucks. I don't know how much.
We still got Jalen Walker on the board. I
The
think we
thing
might
is
as
for
well.
the Falcons that they need.
Georgia
My
boy going back to
My
Atlanta
thing with
though.
Jalen Walker is that because he's just kind of a jack of all trades and then how he's a pure pass rusher, you need a truly creative defensive coordinator to get the best out of him. Raheem Moore's playing the 3-4.
He can
I
move around too, I feel like. I feel
or
like Jalen Walker's
they're playing
slide
a
kind of
4-3.
insecure.
They play in a fourth because the Falcons just need pass rush. If it's not pass rush, it'd probably be an offensive lineman in the first because they did lose a center, but I don't know what they're going to take and move to center. So, like, maybe they take Jahad Campbell, but honestly, it's either maybe they take Ezaraku, honestly. Yeah, honest Donovan Ezaraku for the Falcons.
Donovan Zaraku.
I say this, but I know they're not going to take a pass rusher in the first. Yeah, he's the edge from Boston College. He was up there in the first.
Oh, right
Yeah.
here. All right,
Yeah.
cool. Like I said, I have no idea of these guys. I just jack
So
focused. I have no.
Cardinals, I actually do think make the most sense for Jalen Walker. because
Okay.
they've just kind of taken hybrids, but hopefully in that scheme. Bengals, they definitely need more beef in the middle, but I actually really like this for Starks. Get another player on the back end who can play some in the slot, just because Geno Stone was he got better, but they could use more versatility. Seattle, uh,
Did they take a Pierce after, taking a guy, a defensive lineman last year and
they
Byron
definitely could
Murphy?
need another wide receiver. It just depends on who, because they don't have like they would love a Tet. I don't know if they would love a Golden or a maybe they get a Buka back to play with. Because yeah, go because yeah, the most needs are interior and trenches. Could they go? Actually, good scroll back up. I guess if they want to try just moving up for a competition, Kelvin Banks makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
And then for the Bucks,
This is a Jihad Campbell spot, right?
I know they're line. Yeah, I mean, honestly, with Levante David getting older, Campbell to learn because eventually he's going to retire. They could use some, and then I actually really like Tyler Warren on the. I know they obviously got Ingram, but I think Warren and the Sean Payne offense because they can run and he can block. They've taken tight ends a lot, but I think if Warren goes, and then for
If he
this,
falls this far, I mean, like, yeah, like somebody's gonna fall in love with him. I don't think he's gonna last until 20, honestly. Somebody's gonna fall in love with
maybe.
him.
Hey, I mean, with this draft, it just depends on position of value, but also versus this draft. I for the Steelers. I think it kind of has to be Jackson Dart here,
Like,
unless
oh my God.
I mean
PFF
it's
did not
either
rate this man.
Jackson Dart
Or Jalen
or
Milrow,
Jalen
who they also
Milrow.
like.
Who Jackson Dart I think to me makes the most sense for just chucking it deep. So
Jackson Dart it is. I feel ugly for that, but you know what? It's the Steelers. They took
Kenneth
Kenny
Grant,
Pickett
come on
in the same.
down. You're going back to Jim Harbaugh. They want to get nasty. Like Chargers definitely want to get nastier and be
Yeah.
able to stop the run more. Like just on top of the Michigan connection, Kenneth Grant is exactly the player that, they want to just more beef. They don't want to, because even to go on like versus last year, the Chargers got beat by Baltimore. Jim Harbaugh lost to John Harbaugh because they couldn't stop the run. You
Yeah.
don't think that he thought about that game? He's like, yeah, I got to get some dogs in the middle. I want better to get than somebody he coached. He knows how to get the most of it. So Kenneth Grant feels like a layup. I might place a bet on that. Like if Kenneth Grant's there, the Chargers taking him would be just that makes so much sense. For the Packers, um, I they could who's that corner? I want to see the corners available.
Yeah, sure.
Travis Morrison, Savon. Uh, I kind of like Savon, but I don't know because he fits are athletic. Because it's either that or go to wide receiver. Thing with the Packers, I feel the fans want a receiver, but
They never take one. They
will the
just
GMX?
never do.
Okay, so if they don't take one, then I guess would they be interested in go back to Edge really quickly then one last time?
They have James Pierce that's still there. And
Hmm.
Shamar Stewart. I feel like they'd also take the super athletic edge, right?
You know, Shamar Stewart being on the Packer. Jeff Halfley trying to coach him up. Man, he's gonna go somewhere. So yeah,
Let's do Shamar Stewart. We talked about his athleticism. He seems like someone the Packers would actually turn out to be
I
playing
feel if
well
he
as
goes
well.
in the late, like he goes somewhere with the front seven, they can try to develop him with similar to Rashawn Gary, how it took him a while. I think it actually could work. The Vikings, I know they want to trade back down if ideally, but yeah, they're not going to. If we're just to keep it kind of.
Yeah,
Solid.
simple and not like we
I
don't have to
I don't know
pigeonhole.
if they would take a. I don't know if they like Hampton up to take him that early. Uh Yeah, the board's kind of
I mean, I'm just looking at team needs. What do they need? They need that. They need that. They need that, apparently. I have no clue what I'm looking at anymore.
I'm just trying to think because I don't know. I thought the Vikings, they did lose Cam Bynum, so they could go for safety. I don't know if they would take Kevin Winston that early though. You know what?
Yeah, could they
Trade.
be a team that trade back and take a guy like Siobhan
I
Rebel?
think I think they're going. Thing is, I think the Vikings they're not picking here in real life most likely because they only have I think 4 picks because we traded with the since we
Yeah,
have the Vikings picks they don't have that many. So I
yeah.
think the Vikings are trading back from here. So picking for them at this exact pick is kind of whatever. But
Let's break our rule. Who would trade up to kind of
okay,
pick a guy over here that's kind of in the closer of like this over here?
if probably to trade up for a receiver is my guess honestly. So who's a team? Her scroll back down. I mean, unironically though. Unironically, this makes so much sense for both teams if the Jags traded up with the Vikings because the Vikings, look, they only have 4 picks. They have 24, 97, 139, and 187.
Yeah, we have to give him some stuff back, right? Hey, let's
Okay,
take your third
yeah,
round pick back.
literally just give them their picks back.
Oh, we can't do it because we don't have premium. We can't do it. We have to choose something for him. I'm a poor boy.
Okay, it's okay.
That's
But
so
I'm just
funny.
saying, though, unironically, they should call the Vikings back up and say, "Hey, do you want your picks back? We'll give them to you. Just give us something." I think that'll work out for both teams. It'd be so funny if they literally just they got their own picks back. But okay, so for Vikings here, I'm just gonna go and take.
Fuck it, Omari and Hampton. They just is
You know what?
funny.
He is one of the better players, so they could take Amari Hampton.
Fuck it. We'll give them the running back that they need.
Texans.
But with all the receiver depth they probably still need because I don't know if Christian Kirk and the corpse of Tank Dell who may not play this year
They would
and
take a Mecca. They would
and
take a
Nico
Stroud for sure.
who
I
would
feel
they
like
take?
if they don't take offensive, let me see the offensive lineman this year, honestly.
Okay,
They'll
let's
take goal line
not running
player.
back. OT OIL.
Uh,
Z
honestly, I think they would
gr-
take I would take Josh Connerly here.
you don't think they like their small school guys? They already
They do.
had Tyus
I think
Howard.
with Zabel though, he's probably more gonna kick an inside, where Connerly can probably play tackle in the NFL.
True.
So I think just because their left tackle right now is Cam Robinson on a 1-year contract, they don't have anybody behind him. It makes sense to at least draft somebody. So LA on the clock, which honestly, they probably considering I could see them draft. Well, I don't know how early they would draft him, but considering that they did lose Cooper Kupp, all the receivers that the Jags are probably looking at are also the receivers that the Rams are probably looking at. So I kind of want to say Emeka makes a ton of sense here. I don't know if they take receivers super early. Let's
Yeah.
see, tight end, tackle, linebacker, corner. Because I feel Trey Amos actually would be pretty solid. And then
What
who's
other
that?
position?
Linebacker?
Linebacker? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. We haven't looked at linebacker in a bit.
yeah. I gave up Campbell and Walker, so I don't know if they would take those. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm kind of just go back to linebacker. Carson Schwezinger. There's been some like closer to more first round buzz. I think he might go on the first, and considering that this is one giant second round anyways.
Yeah.
Ravens. I think they go Gray Zabel, honestly.
Gray Zabel? Yeah. Oh yeah. Because you say they need a guard. That's a guy who's probably gonna move
I mean, they
inside, you
did
said?
lose Makari, obviously.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Hold
No,
up.
you're good.
I I forgot that my apartment is doing fire inspections today, so I guess
Oop.
I'm going to be on mute
No, you're
for.
good. I can't hear it. The thing it cut
They
out.
stopped it for now. I don't know if it's coming back.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, we're almost done.
The Lions. Apparently they need a wideout, even though
James
they have a
Pierce
lot of good
Jr.
weapons. James Pierce Jr. The Commanders.
I really want to give them a receiver here, even though they do have Debo.
Yeah. I mean, how healthy is he going to be is the question. Do they take the speedster like Golden? Do they go for versatility and Igbuka? Like,
You can
what do
pick
you?
any one of those guys and they'll be fine.
I think Golden's going like 19, so let's just fucking speed guy. Oh man, Jabal's on mute. I feel under pressure here though. I
I don't
think I
know.
have to take
I guess probably trenches. Look at
Trench.
corner. Look at corner because Kyer Elam sucks. So yeah, Trey Amos.
Maxwell here. Oh, Trey Amos. I was gonna say Maxwell Harrison. Dang, they really got beat up in the Ace in the Super Bowl, and they say their needs are all in the fucking line of scrimmage for the Chiefs. They all fucking suck, they said.
Where's Isaiah Bond?
I say, I'm not gonna make the
Everyone's been
joke.
telling me the Chiefs are going to draft Bond. So
Isaiah Bond. What position is he?
I'm just trolling. He's a receiver. Don't take him though.
Okay, I was gonna say, were they gonna take the LSU guy before circumstances?
Honestly, with the state of their receiving core, I could
Luther Borden.
either
Luther Borden.
Burden or Buka. It just depends if teams see people. Let's take Burden. I think he's too good.
And then the Eagles.
Who played at Georgia?
Who played at Georgia? Ah, Mikael Williams. Welcome to the Eagles. Just the best available Georgia Bulldog. Oh Lord.
I was kind of trolling with that pick, but I could see them doing it unironically. The more I think about it, I was going to
Yeah.
them taking an offensive tackle, but I could see them taking Michael, honestly.
Who's the best Bulldog? There you go. As a meme pick, and of course to just keep the tradition going. I think that is. Oh, look at that. I think I have the picture saved so I can just upload it. The first official Jagged Edge Mock Draft. And we can have a reasoning that is on there. So that's wonderful. I don't want to pay for PFF Plus because I am not that much of a diehard like I used to. If I was just like in school and still working, that would be something that I could be doing. But other than that, Javal, that was our first official mock draft. We got some question answered from John Shipley, our good friend. Any last takeaways before we leave it before, one more podcast before the NFL draft next week?
I'm scared it's going to the alarm's going to come back, but um, we don't know what's going to happen, so we'll figure out and see. But hopefully they just take good players, and we'll see how intangibly rich they are.
Intangibly rich. All right, Javal, I'll leave you be. We'll let the video process and then I'll also just tweet out the mock draft right now just to kind of like give a take out there. All right, Javal, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. I hope your Heat I guess fuck up because you don't want them to make the playoffs. So I
We're
hope they
making the playoffs. We're beating the Hawks ass on Friday night. Oh, dude. Magic 7 seed, Heat 8 seed. That's happening. I'd love to be proven wrong. What I know, they're gonna win on. They're gonna the next
they're
game.
100% winning. The Hawks are mentally dog shit. That you guys are winning like badly. You all are blowing them out. Trey Young's a bitch. All right, man. You have a wonderful rest of your night, man. You take it easy.